players in the team. Keep a great company in the stream.
It's a Murali End. Welcome to the show. We're here when you're high. We're here when you're low. Some days you're happy, some days you wanna when happy. It's we when mad, it's them. It's the same place, Murali End. Sri Lanka Cricket, we gon' represent. So tell a friend.
Welcome to Murali End. My name's Mark Machado. I am in Colombo and I am joined by Sri Lanka's #1 journalist, Estelle, who's in another part of the city. I'm also joined today by Sri Lanka's #1 cricket historian, Nicholas Brooks, who joins us from Jamaica, and the Professor of Cricketology, Dominic Machado, who joins us from the States. We are gathered here today to celebrate Pathum Nissanka's passing into the IPL. He has picked up the big bag. We're all damn happy for him. I'm having a party here on a rooftop. Sorry for if it leaks through. And we've also, on top of all that, we've got a lot of other things to talk about as well. Other players have been picked up. Matish Patarana got one of the biggest bags ever for a foreign player. Wadadu Hasarange is back in the league. Deekshana won't be in the league. There's a women's squad going out, leaving to go to India tomorrow, I think. And there's all new selectors as well. I mean, there's never a dull week in Sri Lankan cricket. I suppose last week was maybe a little bit dull. But this week is kind of made up for it. Anyway, let's get straight into it. Estelle, how are you feeling about that IPL auction and Pathum finally making it in?
Yeah, that's the big news, isn't it? Pathum Nissanka making it into the IPL. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a long time coming, but it's certainly like a deserved entry because he's been playing so well across international cricket over the last year or so. And he's really kind of reached a new level, hasn't he? And I think also getting the runs in the UAE has really helped his cause because he's caught everyone's eye. He's managed to get runs there. So really good on him. I mean, he deserves it. I mean, I was thinking, just looking at, how far he's come from a guy who a lot of us thought was going to be this test specialist. And I don't think that was misplaced, that belief, like that he would, like that would be his format. But the way he's worked at it and really progressed in limited overs cricket really, should be credited. And he's got a deserved spot in the IPL.
Yeah, I'll be honest, guys. I nearly cried when I saw it happening, right? I remember watching his debut. I think it was just coming out of COVID, or England had... We were under Boris Johnson's leadership then, so COVID was a bit of a disaster in London. We kept coming in and out of lockdowns, and I think it was during a lockdown he debuted in the West Indies, and I think he made a century in his debut. And I just remember there was such hype around him, and there was a lot of a lot of people saying at the time he'd never play T20 cricket, would never be a good T20 batter. But I think the thing that I've always thought that he's possessed, and I think it's brought out, is that actually every time you see him, and obviously he's going to get out for every now and again, he's going to get out for for 3 runs or not make the big scores. But you can almost see series upon series, he progresses and he just becomes a better player. I think, Nick, what I find really emotional about it is that you watch this auction, you watch these IPL auctions, you watch franchise cricket around the world, and you see the same old names go around the world and kind of do nothing. And it's like particularly people who've watched Sri Lankan cricket closely, you've watched his development over the last few years, and he's become, he's one of for me, I reckon he's the form T20 batter in the world right now. And everything had fallen into place for him to kind of not to make sure he got an IPL place this time around, right?
Yeah, it's a huge moment. And as you say, Marky, he's developed so much. I was one of those early in his career who was questioning whether he was the right kind of fit for white ball cricket, whether he had enough shots and scoring areas. I think he's an exemplar to other players of how much you can develop your game, a reminder to pundits and analysts that players aren't kind of static and can totally change. And like, I'm so chuffed for him. Last year, it was really kind of hard seeing, Kamindu getting a gig, seeing Charith and Kusal get replacement call-up gigs. And you think, for us who watch Sri Lankan cricket a lot, that Pathum is the best T20 batter of that sort of bunch. And you've got that kind of, are they even watching feeling? So yeah, it's great to see him get a gig. It's, it's a real endorsement because, there's so many quality Indian openers. For overseas openers, it's not easy getting an IPL call up. And he's a player transformed. I know he's got a couple of low ones in the ILT20 last couple of innings, but you see him going out to bat with such intent every time. He now looks like he really wants to dominate the power play. I think he's striking still in the 190s in the ILT20. So yeah, I'm chuffed for him. I imagine he'll start for Delhi Capitals, and I can't wait to see it.
Tom, he's done the easy part. He's got the gig. What's he going to do now? How does he retain it?
Well, I think he's got to do what he's been doing. I think that's the magic of Pathum Nissanka, is he goes from strength to strength. He assesses his strengths, builds upon them, and tries to always add new things to his locker. I think that's one thing we've constantly seen. He's never gotten tired of trying to do new things, try new shots, play the same ball differently. And that's the mark of a top player in international cricket, someone who is never going to be found wanting. You're never going to be able to do the same thing to him every single time. We know many a Sri Lankan batter who coming in, their weaknesses and strengths are exactly the same as they were, 5 years ago. And teams figure that out very quickly, but Pathum has adapted, and I'm curious to see how he'll adapt. And what I want to see from him, I think the next step is twofold. I have no doubt he's going to produce in the IPL. I think he's exactly what you want. I think he has a good measure of the bowlers in the IPL. But what I want to see him do is bring that attitude, the swagger that he plays with, right? We saw that 107 off of 58 against India. I think that was the innings that probably he finally put all the scouts on notice that this is not someone who we can ignore anymore, but this is someone with serious skill. And I think a lot of the Indian players saw that. I remember seeing Hardik kind of look and be like, okay, this guy is, a serious player. So I want him to sort of take, the next step is, okay, grab your spot. And now let's take on a leadership role. Think about, I've made myself better. What can I do to make my teammates better around me? Right. And he's going to see a lot of that in the IPL when he sees and he operates with the best players in the world. What do I do to take myself, not just from a high caliber, high quality player, but someone who is a leader, who can influence strategy, who can take his learnings? Because I think the standout thing to me is he's constantly learning. He's thinking, okay, I've struggled against this. What can I do? And now how can we take that and use that as a big picture thing? So that's my thought.
I'm not sure we'll open up the studio because we've got a lot to discuss today, but there's an interesting comment that's just come in from Sanuda. Can he start for DC over Rahul and Duckett? I'm guessing I'll come to you for this, Nick, because you're the closest to an Englishman we have on this show. Ben Duckett or Pathum Nissanka, who are you picking?
I would pick Pathum Nissanka over Ben Duckett. I think the KL thing's interesting because he didn't open for them quite a lot last year. They used him as a sort of 3-4 floater a lot of the time. I think they've also got quite a lot of lefties in their top order. Abhishek Porel's left-handed. They just signed Nitish Rana. I think is he left-handed as well. So maybe that's a slight little advantage for Pathum. I don't think it's unimaginable that both Pathum and Duckett could end up in the starting 11. Duckett's a really good player of spin, so he can be used as a 3-4 guy as well. I think if that did happen, it might be at the expense of Dushi Chamira, because I would have thought that Stark and Stubbs are kind of the overseas locks. But yeah, I would imagine Pathum to start. Not that it's necessarily a determinant, but they paid, I think, double what they paid for Duckett for Pathum. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that team comes together. I really like the look of Delhi with these buys they picked up.
Estelle, I reckon that Pathum Nissanka's kind of set out a roadmap now for what young Sri Lankan batters need to do, right? I think it's slightly different with bowlers because every bowler offers something different. But I think with batters, it's get good enough to get international selection. Once you're international selection, kind of cement your place in there and keep getting good enough, and then keep improving your game till you become undroppable, and then the big bags will roll in, right? Unlike other players, I don't think, as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, there wasn't, Pathum didn't come from one of the big schools in Sri Lanka. He didn't have a big kind of push to begin with. I don't know how many runs he scored as a schoolboy. Do you think we might see more Sri Lankan players kind of try and follow this roadmap, Estelle?
Yeah, it has to be the roadmap you follow, right? If you want to get this far. And I think it's worth pointing out once again that Nissanka, as I said before, was earmarked to be like this test batter, got into the limited overs team, and he's gone from strength to strength, right? And it's not just been, the kind of thing where, okay, you've got talent, you play your game, and that should be good enough. He's tried to improve, and he's improved on, each and every different facet that he needed to in a way that he fits into the modern game. He hasn't gone about it like, look, I'm making runs consistently, and that should be the bar for me. Yes. He's tried to get better and better, and we can see that with his strike rate, right? I'm not sure he'll be able to maintain like a 190 strike rate throughout his franchise career, but like those are not things we saw even like 3 to 4 years ago from him. I remember at the 2021 T20 World Cup, if I'm not mistaken, under Mickey Arthur, where Sri Lanka really made waves. He made runs. He was one of the most consistent batters for Sri Lanka, but at a strike rate of like 110, 120, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not the batter we see right now. He's transformed himself, and I think a lot of credit has to go to him, because he's not one of those players like Kusal Mendis who had all the shots at his disposal, like who was that naturally aggressive batter. He's not that type of player, right? But he's built himself to this level. So definitely, like in terms of work ethic and like building yourself as a player, he's the type of player that a lot of Sri Lankan batters would want to emulate, because you get a lot of technically correct batters, right, in the system, who sometimes struggle when they come to the international level, because the game has evolved so much where you need to be a bit unorthodox if you want to get runs, and if you want to fit that kind of mold of the international cricketer now. So definitely one that a lot of players can learn a lot from, and he's still young, right? He's got plenty of years remaining. My only thing is like, in the past we've had some occasions where he's had this consistent run of form, and then when he drops, he's not had a lot of runs at all. So he really needs, I think, a good start in the IPL. I hope, as Nick said, he does get a run for DC at the top of the order, and in that case, just gets a couple of good innings under his belt, and he should have a great season.
I'm going to add one thing to what Estelle said, because I think there's one other factor that has played into Pathum's rise, and that is consistent selection. We can think back to Mickey Arthur and Chris Silverwood believing in him as a player, even though we couldn't quite see this end product. Like, with maybe the exception of Mark, none of us saw this end product coming. Right. And they believed in him, and they selected him consistently and believed that there was a player there who was worth investing in. And we allowed him to develop that game over time to become a top level player. And this is just sort of a word to the selectors, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But consistency allows your talented players to bring out their best qualities. The guys we have persisted with have grown and developed, but chopping and changing isn't going to do anything. Can you imagine? I can't imagine Pathum being in this spot if we dropped him every time, he struck at 70 in an ODI game or 95 in a T20 match. Right. And the last thing I'll add, one thing that makes this even crazier is 2 years ago, he went unsold at an LPL auction. Unsold at an LPL auction, which is just, to go from that to, hey, now we're talking about 4 crore in the biggest league in the world. Incredible stuff.
Unbelievable stuff, isn't it? When he debuted as a T20 in the T20 team before he played an LPL game, didn't he? He
Yep.
played for. I think that speaks a little bit more about the LPL than it does about Pathum Nissanka, though. I just want to bring this.
It was a surprise, wasn't it? I think it was a surprise when he wasn't picked up.
Yeah.
I mean, at this stage, who could be ever surprised by anything that goes on in Sri Lanka cricket? Like, how can you ever be surprised by any of it, right? I want to talk about this comment. I'll come to you about it, Nick. He also has a good captain to work with. This is from Shabney. Sheros will be a good captain for him. I think it is quite important what franchise you do end up at, right? And Delhi Capitals, for me, is quite well organised, because I think there's a couple that can be quite chaotic, and we've seen in the past a few Sri Lankan players rock up there and just kind of get lost in the system a little bit, right?
Yeah, except for the fact that Shreyas has gone to Punjab with Ponting. But that aside, I think Akshar is a really good captain, and I think KL will be a good senior batter for Pathum to bounce off. So, yeah, sadly no Shreyas, but I think other wise heads for him to work with there.
I can't believe Shabney came all up in our comments with some fake news. Can't believe that. Unbelievable. Should we talk about the other 2 players that sold, and then talk about the players who didn't sell? Winindu Hasaranga at Lucknow. Tom Moody's there, taking him across. He's worked with him quite a bit. I don't think it's unexpected. I think at this point, Wani, to me, seems like, as long as he kind of doesn't have a total disastrous IPL, he should be around for the next few, because he's proved himself to be quite a decent operator at this level. I don't know what you think about that, Dom.
Yeah, I think, he is a decent operator. There are some questions around some of the things, right? Like, I think, can he consistently show that batting skill that would take him from, hey, this is a good quality international level leg spinner who we can get in our side, right? Who might be replaceable by, say, a homegrown option at a cheaper price, to, hey, this is a guy who is worth 10 crore plus. So I think that's kind of one of the next steps for Wani. I also feel like it's so good for him to get those reps against teams that are going to go after him, because we know what he can do on slow, low pitches where teams can't go after him, and we know how good he is. But I think part of him taking the next step as a bowler is having exposure to aggressive batters coming at him and developing kind of the different strategies to deal with that, right? How is he going to bowl to the left-handers? We know against the right-handers, he's going to look to stay in the stump line. He's going to bowl the googly, but how is he going to do against left-handers? Can he get them out even if they go after him? And so for Wani, right, again, who is still very young, I think he's been around so long that we tend to think of him as old, but he's 27, 28. So there still is a lot of time for him to work on his craft. Always good to see him playing cricket, because I think for him, his fitness is very much linked to how much cricket he's playing. Time off doesn't seem to get him in the best shape, but when he's playing consistently and regularly, he seems to be in it. And the only concern I have is obviously injury concerns. When he plays a lot of cricket, he does tend to get injured. So I think it's it is a big season for Winindu Hasaranga, the bowler and the batter. And I'm just hoping that he goes on and performs and shows, the capabilities that we know he has.
Look, it's easy to knock Sri Lankan players' fitness when you're abroad, when you lived in America. When you come here and you realise it's a kotu and a mutton roll at every street corner, you understand the problems that these people face. You have empathy.
Mark's empathy.
Yeah. Esti, can we talk about Matisha Patharana? Because he went for big money. I think there's 2 things I want to mention about it. It's that, firstly, in the IPL, franchise teams clearly, obviously, rate him. I think we all knew that anyway. We weren't expecting him not to go sold. But I do wonder how much his performance in the ILT20 last night came into the thinking around the auction table today, because I definitely thought he'd be sold. I just didn't expect him to be the second biggest buy of the day, right? Is that right? Was he second? I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a bit. It's like, and I'm don't misunderstand me. I'm really happy for him, but it's a bit crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is crazy. I mean, I don't think any of us were expecting him to go for that amount of money, right? Because he's had a few problems since being retained by CSK a couple of seasons ago. He didn't really perform up to expectations and was released. And even for Sri Lanka, he hasn't kind of been able to find a regular spot. I remember watching him at that. What was it called? The Reds, Greens, Greys, Blues tournament, where he just
look.
he
As you
couldn't
know,
get his
I'm a
line
committed
right.
SLC Grays fan, and I'd please don't come on this podcast and give me Grey slander.
Name 2 players played for the Greys. 2 players.
Dustin Sharnaker.
I mean, I wouldn't know because I can remember.
Don't they change it every year?
They do.
I mean, you can just name anyone, right? They've all at some point.
They've all probably played.
They've all played, yeah.
Chandimal would have played at some point for the Greys.
Yeah, so even in that tournament, he wasn't able to kind of get his lines right, and you could see that his captain didn't trust him right with the ball. As soon as he had one bad over, he was taken out of the attack. And I think Matisha is he's very young, right? We talk about him like he's this, he's this veteran who's been playing the IPL for a number of years and he's got all this experience under his belt, but he's only 22 years old. He's young, and I think he's very confidence is a big thing for him. If he can get, we saw him thrive under MS Dhoni, and a lot of that was to do with how much confidence Dhoni gave him, right? In terms of like, even when he went for runs, Dhoni was the type of captain who would say, look, it wasn't because he bowled badly, because like there were a couple of edges and streaky runs that went through. So he is very much a confidence player, but he hasn't shown that amount of confidence over the last year or so, and that's why I think it's a surprise. Like Mark said, obviously we're happy for him, right? I mean, make as much money as you can while you can, because we know, I mean, this could be gone in 2 years, right? So very happy for him, but at the same time really surprised that he went for that amount of money. I hope that his action and the fitness issues have kind of sorted themselves out by now, or will be sorted out by the time the season comes over, so that he can really like kind of justify that, because you don't want people trolling him, which we've seen in the last season, right? Where he goes for this amount of money but hasn't really been able to back that up. But yeah, if he can get his action right, then I think that consistency with the lines and lengths will come. And then we've seen how good he can be, right? That one season for CSK was just unbelievably good, second just to Bumrah. So he's got the potential. Whether he can deliver is a question.
I need to check this, but I think he's still the second most effective bowler in the IPL after Bumrah. He definitely was for 2 seasons, and I think even after the one he just had, I think that still might be the case. It feels to me like he's been in a bit of a cocoon, basically from that last IPL till, some people might say until last night. I would say probably still is, and I think we're all hoping he has a magic World Cup and then has a magic IPL, right?
I think we can't underrate the fact that CSK really struggled, and if you're a bowler who is bowling, not at the power play, but in the middle overs and then at the death, and you're getting your team is getting smashed, it's not going to look good for you, right? He needs to be in the right situation where he is given meaningful overs in the middle and at the death, right? That's where he makes the biggest difference. And if you're getting crushed, it's going to be hard to do that. And I think that has been the case a little bit in his international career. I think one of the things that is difficult about Matisha Pathurana is, one, he bowls at the toughest times, but 2, he only bowls at the toughest times. So there's no like give and take, like, okay, let's give him a little bit of an easier role. Let's let him bowl, when the ball is swinging or anything like that. He has to take on that role, and there's a lot of pressure that comes with it. There's a lot of angst that comes with that, and at the same time, he performed well, but sometimes it's just going to go badly. I think that's part of the life of a death bowler, is that sometimes it's going to go badly for you, and it's producing more often than not, and producing the deliveries more often than not that will get you wickets and keep the runs low. Sometimes you're going to get smashed, right? Some day that doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Bumrah or Malinga or anything, right? You will get tap. And I think learning how to support that extremely special skill set is going to be important, both for his IPL team and for Sri Lanka going forward.
We're getting some questions come in. Please do leave your comments on the side. We're getting some questions about the women's squad that's going off. We'll get to those in a bit. We're talking about Sri Lankan players that got picked up in the IPL earlier today, or I think the auction might still be carried on. I think it goes on for about 4
They just
days.
Finished, I think.
They just finished? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we need to talk about the players that didn't get selected. The big one for me that I thought had probably a better than 50% chance for getting a team, because he's done it the last few seasons, was Mahesh Theekshana. Nick, he's at this point, he's not been selected, right? How do you feel about that? How do you think we should feel about that as well?
I think we and Theek should feel slightly to fairly disappointed. Like, it's not that long ago, right? 2 seasons ago, he was part of an IPL winning side, a regular in an IPL winning side. He's been an IPL regular pretty much his whole career. Like, I know he didn't have the best season for Rajasthan last year, but again, in an underperforming team, I think a lot of that wasn't necessarily his fault. I'd still expect to see him playing in the IPL next season. I reckon someone will get injured and he'll probably get a late call up. But it is a reflection that his stock has fallen quite some way in a fairly short amount of time, as you would say it has for a lot of Sri Lanka's players, right? I think Wani will feel slightly parred at getting a 2 crore gig. We're talking about Pathum in a very different way to how we were 12 months ago. So a slightly worrying trend of maybe players, Pathum aside, sort of going backwards rather than forwards. But yeah, Theeks, I think, will be disappointed. I don't think really Kusal or Dasan can have any huge complaints about being passed over.
I thought Dasan might have an outside chance of being selected, only because I'd assume he'd be quite cheap in the auction, and he does bowl a bit as well. Yeah.
I guess you would say, at 1 crore, is he 25 times worse than Cam Green?
Yeah.
I don't know that maths necessarily makes sense, but I see what you're saying, Marky.
And I think, I wouldn't be surprised if DC bring him in at some point or another, right? Because he is the captain for Dubai, right? He's been around the squad, so I wouldn't be surprised if that happens at some point. To me, the bigger surprise was Kusal, because I just see the wicketkeeper batters, overseas wicketkeeper batters that are picked, like Jordan Cox or Josh Inglis getting 8.6 crore to play 4 games. I honestly just don't see much of a difference between those players. He obviously didn't do himself any favors by his performance in the IPL last year, that one kind of disastrous game that he played. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a late call up when someone gets injured or hurt. But again, a player who I think could really benefit from an IPL gig.
Yeah. Before we move on, Estelle, what do you think overall us as Sri Lanka fans should think about? There's what 3 players added today already to the kind of 4 players that were there anyway. 7 players in the IPL. We think there's a couple more that could kind of sneak in. We're kind of doing all right in the grand scheme of things, aren't we?
Yeah, if we really look at it, these 3 are the ones who, if one of them was not picked, it would have been a big surprise, right? So it's good to see 7 Sri Lankans, especially given that we didn't really have such a great year, right? In international cricket, there weren't really any outstanding achievements. So it's good to see. But obviously, if we could get like 20 players in, that would be great. And as Dom mentioned, to be fair, and this has been the case since, the first season, right? Sometimes, and you see it in the women's side as well. Sometimes you see players from Australia or England who are barely there, fitting into IPL teams, when most likely you have more quality players in some of these international teams. So that part, when you compare it like that, it's slightly disappointing. But I think the 7 players who are in really have an opportunity for each of their teams. I don't see anyone really like, not getting an opportunity to play. So that'll be good for Sri Lanka because they need that kind of experienced players really going out there and getting some game time.
Yeah.
Also, can
you
I address this one comment
Yeah.
here? There's no point of being bored if you're just going to warm the bench. I think one thing I will say, no, it's not all about the money, but this is money that can change generations in Sri Lanka, right? Like their families, the generations of a family can be changed with the amount of money they're getting. So, warm the bench if you want. Like all of them have deserved their spot, right? It's not like someone's just doing them a favor by picking them. They've all performed well in different leagues or in international cricket and earned that spot. So if you're going to be on the bench, you're going to be on the bench. But there is definitely a point in getting there, and not just the money, the experience you get with the environment you're in, the foreign coaches, the other players from opposition countries, the captains, all of that. It's definitely worth it. Even if you're not even in the match day squad, it's still worth it.
100%.
If any IPL teams are looking for someone to warm the bench, Sanuda is gladly volunteering. Estelle also volunteering.
Me too. I'll do the dog thrower.
Lot of bench warmers over here. I just one thing on. I think if you're Kusal Mendes, the one player that would really annoy me with the amount of IPL, we've lost Nick, amount of IPL games and caps he's got is Tom Curler-Cadwell. I always bring him up so every franchise you see this guy's playing and I never see him do anything, and I'm like, I'm sure he's a really great guy, but I just think Sri Lanka have loads of players who have just more talent than him. He's just much more effective at getting himself into these squads. I don't know if it's a case of we're not coaching up to the right coaches or whatnot, but you got to do what you got to do, I think, sometimes, right? I'll switch us into that till Nick returns. Should we talk about the women's squad? Because they are leaving tomorrow to go to India for I think it's a 5-match series, T20 series. This is all, I suppose, kind of part of the preparation for the World Cup in England next June, which hopefully Estelle will be joining me and Nick in London or in the UK to be part of, and we're already planning stuff in the background for that. So if you watch this in the UK, or if you're planning to be in the UK for that World Cup, we've got a lot of things. We'll have a lot of things going on during it. This is the squad that came out today. Esty, before we get into it, I think we need to also mention the coaching as well, right? Because there's a change of head coach due. Do you know who is currently in charge and who'll be in charge of this, or do we need to try and badger people at SLC to tell us, or wait for some photos to emerge, or what is going on?
So I don't have any news about it. I haven't heard much about it, but that's completely on theme, right? Like, I mean, we didn't know Rumesh was coach, or there was never any announcement that he's like official coach for this amount of time. He was a stand-in coach, and then it just kind of continued. I would expect him to be traveling with the team because there hasn't been an announcement or any kind of news on that. So I think he will continue until they do find somebody, because they have advertised for it. And we don't even know whether he's applied for it, right? Like, it's possible that he's applied for it and will get the gig once again. But no such news on the coaching staff. But I will say I think it's a great thing that Sri Lanka are getting 5 T20s against the ODI world champions, right? Like, I mean, India's a team in form. Good to be playing them in those conditions. particularly because you don't get a lot of fixtures that are outside the women's championship cycle. So good to see those kind of relationships enabling our players to get more game time.
Should we have a look at the squad? Because I flashed it up and didn't actually talk about it. So for the purposes of those listening to this as a podcast, if you are, please do hit subscribe. And if you didn't know, you can listen to this show as a podcast about an hour or so after it goes out on YouTube. I'll go through the squad. Chamari is, of course, captain. Hassani Pereira. Vishmi Harshita is vice captain, which, if you're a Sri Lankan cricket fan, the idea that we've named the vice captain is always quite worrying. Nilakshi, Kavisha, Imeshi Delani, Kushani, Malsha Shahani, Ranavira, Gimani, Madhushani, Kavindi, Rashmika, and Malki Madara. Sorry, I'm reading this off the tiniest screen, which is also why I'm letting in, but you can't see this. Esty, Dom, any surprises for you in this squad?
So, I was kind of trying to take the 30,000-foot view of what does this tell us about their preparation for the 2026 World Cup. So does it mean Anushka Sanjeevani is making way for Kaushini Nithyanagana, right? This is something that's been in the wings. I don't know if she's explicitly retired. The two senior pacers, Achini Kulasurya and Udeshka Prabodhini, are also missing out, and they've gone with the younger Kavya Kavindi and Malki Madara. A couple omissions too that I was, and sorry, one more thing. Inoka Ranawira is still in the squad, right? So they liked what they saw from Inoka in the World Cup, and it seems like they want to continue with her. And again, 12 months ago, we were saying, is she done? The two big omissions for me are Madhuri Nanyakara, because as a T20 player, she provides something that I don't think very many of the players outside of Chamri do. Real power hitter down the order. She'd shown some promise in some T20 games before. And then Jumi Vihanga, again, can turn the ball, really is able to threaten batters and has the potential to be a big hitter down the order. I know it seems like, obviously, if you go with someone like Sashini Gimhani, right, you're trying to give another young player a chance. But I love to see those two women in the squad because I think they add some dynamism that has been sorely lacking from the squad. But I don't know. Those were the things that stood out to me because it's a fairly significant set of changes that we've seen.
Go on, SD.
Yeah, I think especially because it's the bowling lineup, right? Like that, it's going to be an inexperienced bowling lineup going to India, and that was interesting to me because I mean, you start reading off the squad and it's like, okay, these are your top 5-6 batters, right? And then you get to the bowlers and it's just Inoka, and you've got a lot of inexperienced bowlers in there. So that was interesting to me, as Dom mentioned, those two players, Manudi and Devumi Vihanga. I think interesting that they haven't been picked. I was trying to look back at when Sri Lanka actually had a T20 squad, and it's I think the last time they played a T20 was back either in January or December of last year, where they went to New Zealand. Yeah. So in that squad, Devumi is not there. So she's been performing in ODI cricket, but hasn't really got opportunities in T20s. As Dom said, Manudi had a reasonably good tour of New Zealand that time, and she does provide that little extra bit with the ball as well. Very young, so opportunities, of course, in the future. So the bowling lineup was the most interesting thing to me. Anushka Sanjeevani, I wonder if there's an injury, because I don't really see why they would make a change so close to a World Cup, particularly when it's a position where you don't really. I mean, we've spoken about this before, right? Like, who are the batters beyond that 7 or 8 that Sri Lanka have? And Kaushini Nithyanagana or Imesha Durrani, we have not really seen them do much with the bat. Maybe it's because they haven't been given as many opportunities, but it's tough to see someone like Kaushini come in and replace Sanjeevani, because Sanjeevani, even as a keeper, she adds so much, right? Like, I mean, at the World Cup, she was, I know the Pakistani keeper got all the headlines, but Sanjeevani was
very good. Yeah.
nearly as good, right? Behind
Mhm.
the stumps. She just wasn't able to get much runs. There's also one inclusion I haven't really seen much of her, Nimasha Madhushani. She's
Yeah.
played for Sri Lanka A in the recent past. She's a bowler, as far as I can tell. I haven't seen her play, so that is an interesting inclusion. Kavya Kavindi is another good one. I think very impressive medium pacer.
Mhm.
She's got a lot of promise. Can bat a bit as well, same as Rashmika Sehwan. I think both of them represented Sri Lanka at the Under 19 World Cup a couple of years ago. And for me, probably the one I am most happy to see in this squad is Masha Shehani, because I think as an all-round option, she can really. I mean, she has the potential to do really well. As Dom was talking about Deomi Vihanga, who is that good off spinner but can bat as well. Masha Shehani is very similar. She's a very tight bowler, bowls good lines and lengths with the ball off spinner, but can like really give you some runs down in that middle order. And that's an area where Sri Lanka have struggled, right? Where if you don't get runs from the top 5, you're basically struggling. So they need that kind of extra strengthening in the lower middle order. So she's one I'm really excited to see. It should be a massive challenge because obviously India is going to be, really confident after that World Cup win. But it's a different format. So I wonder if there would be a few experiments from their end as well. But yeah, really excited to see how they go.
Hello
What's
has
my
asked.
thought? Yeah.
Yeah, SD, what's your thoughts on Hassani Pereira's inclusion?
Look, we've had a problem with Hasini Pereira's inclusions pretty much the entire time we've done this podcast, right? But I mean, she has been good, right? This
Yeah.
year, she's been good
Yeah.
in May during that tri-series. I know it's ODI cricket, but if you look at the Sri Lankan batters, apart from Chamari, you don't really see much of a difference in the way they go about things in T20 versus ODI cricket, right? They all start slow, and then once they get in, can get going. Hasini Pereira has shown good form over the recent past, so I don't see much of a problem in her inclusion, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mark, I'm curious to hear about thoughts on the batting order, because we've seen Hassani as an opener in ODI cricket. How is that going to work? Do we see a change? Do we see Chamari bat at 3-4? I mean, I think she should open, especially in T20 cricket, because you've got to take advantage of that power play if you can. What role does Vishmi play in the T20 squad? I think I'm curious to see how they deal with those batting questions. I think we've seen growth from the Sri Lankan batters, but I'm curious the strategic approach to T20s, especially against, world champions in ODI cricket, a team that expects to contend for the T20 World Cup as well.
So I think part of the kind of go back a little bit to the Hassani Pereira question and what SD's thoughts are on it, and also what Dominic's kind of said about the batting order, is I think that we kind of overestimate how far along the development of women's cricket is in Sri Lanka. And actually, if you look at a lot of these players, they've only since 3 years, not even 4 years, that they've actually kind of almost been full-time cricketers and kind of getting access to professional facilities and professional coaching and able to live like full-time cricketers and dedicate time in their heads to trying to be the best player, which is why I think you get a player like Hassani Pereira, who early on, basically, let's be honest, until this year wasn't doing much in the role. Obviously, it's frustrating for her and the selectors and the management saying no to do something, but it's not like, all right, you go and you give someone a paycheck, you walk to a dressing room and go, right, you're all professional cricketers now. This is what you all earn. Go out and do it. That they're going to do it overnight, because they're also playing against professional teams as well. They're going to figure it out. They're going to learn it. They're going to have time to go, oh, right, I don't need to go and do a job in the morning, or I don't need to, do all the other things that they need to do to survive. I could just focus on it. And I think we're starting to see the where at the times when we have been competitive, obviously we all talk about the Asia Cup, and we've been competitive against basically everyone over the last 2-3 years. It's because I think that this squad is kind of just starting to get to grips with it. It was that World Cup in South Africa where it was on the eve of that World Cup. They announced that actually they're going to start paying them something that in Sri Lanka would be kind of considered a kind of livable wage, right? Still way below what any of the other kind of major women's teams are getting paid, or way below what the men are getting paid. But what has happened, though, I think I'm right in saying, ST, is since the World Cup that finished a few weeks ago, there has been a lot of domestic cricket being played. So they are starting to, this idea that they're building depth out in it is, we're kind of starting to see that a little bit in the selection, right? And there is kind of a bit of a selection happening. Otherwise, you go back 4 years or 3, not that long ago, and it was like, oh right, these are the women in the squad because they're the ones who are fit to play, right?
Yeah, I think, as you said, like, it's not going to happen overnight, right? Like, the development, I know Sri Lanka has been very slow in kind of catching up with the other teams, but now that we're seeing more investment and resources coming through for the national team, we're starting to slowly see results. And as you said, that's why we're seeing there's even a conversation to be had about selection, because there are more options now, right? I mean, they might not come into, I mean, someone like Udeshika Prabodhini is going to be difficult to replace, and you might not see that kind of quality. But if you look at, you don't have to look far, like someone like Malki Madara, she's not, I mean, she's in her mid-20s. We hadn't seen much of her in her early 20s, right? Sri Lanka's notoriously pick like very early at 15, 16, 17. But she was not one of those players. We didn't see her early on. But she came in and immediately was impactful, right? That tri-series against South Africa and India, then during the World Cup. So we're seeing some quality coming through. And also, we're seeing more club teams, right? And it's kind of the opposite problem that the men have, where they have too many. The women had too few. So sometimes, a Navy B team would have far better players than a Colts A team, right? And those players wouldn't get to really compete with the best players in the domestic scene. But now with more teams coming through, you're getting a lot more players being given opportunities to play. Of course, in time, you don't want to go down the men's cricket path where there are like, 50 clubs and 50 teams playing the top division. But at the moment, it's helping bring more players into the system, right? And that's what you need. You need a big pool of players to pick from. It's very interesting to see where things will go, because we've had Rumesh Ratnayaka, who's had a massive impact, I think, mentally on this team, especially with the younger players, right? And I would go as far to say, as someone like Hasini Pereira has grown a lot under his leadership. So if there is a change, then what happens there, and we might even, like, you could expect a change in leadership in the next couple of years as well, right? And then that's going to be a big transition. So I hope by then that kind of second string or second group of players has come up to a level, and giving them opportunities like this is useful. Because I think one of the previous episodes we discussed how it's difficult to give opportunities to players because there are stakes, right? I mean, you're playing women's championship games, you can't experiment, because every game matters, because points carry forward towards qualifying for the World Cup. Whereas, like, when you have games that don't fall into that category, yes, you want to win and you want to perform as well, but it gives you that little bit of leeway in trying out new players and giving them that game time as we head into a very kind of critical period in terms of leadership in the Sri Lankan setup.
2 questions come in on that. Comma has asked, don't you guys think that it's time to change the captain, as who's going to get it would have the luxury of playing after Patu's experience? And also the other question that came in was
about Harshita, right?
Yeah, Samini, if they are planning to groom Harshita as captain, is she a good option? Esty, you could answer the Harshita question first. That isn't because I always throw to you first for all women's questions because I'm a misogynistic pig. It's because she was one of your teammates once upon a time, right?
Well, I won't say teammate. She played for the same squad. The same club. She was in the A team. But I think she would be a good option. I think she's the one who they've been kind of grooming. The only
Mhm.
other one I would say is Kavisha. I think Kavisha would make a fantastic leader because she's got that fire, right? She's not that player who'd take a backward step. So both of them together.
Can I say
I think
something? Can I say
leaders.
something about Kavisha? Is I think she's too much for SLC. I think for the Blazers who run the cricket here, I think should be too much for them. I think should be too much. Should bring
You
too
think
much
it'd be
fire.
like the Dilshan captaincy? Because that to me is the like comparison.
So,
Kavisha
yeah.
and Dilshan, like you know, intense, give everything you got, rock star player, but
Great athletes as well.
yeah,
right?
great athlete. But SLC, you know, we saw what happened with Dilshan's captaincy. They like rule followers more than they do trendsetters.
Yeah, yeah. I also think
Kavisha is the one. She got that aura. I agree.
I think Kavisha just needs to get a little bit more consistent with her performances, right? Harshita is the real consistent one of the.
Yeah, but
kinda younger
Kavisha is
batch
doing
coming
it
through.
with the ball as well, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that's
she's been
that's true.
given the pressure kind of situations where she comes into bat at 5 or she's bowling in the death. So she's the type of player, I think, right from the word go, right? Everyone's been
Yeah.
talking about her. I remember that her first series playing the Dale Scoop to win when it was a really tight game against India. From that point onwards, even Indian players or Indian journalists used to talk about her, right? Because she's got something. You need something extra, right?
I wonder if maybe you even try and split the captaincy, like give Kavisha the T20 captaincy, where everything is a bit more intense, and you give Harshita the 50 over captaincy and kind of see how it goes.
If Kavisha was American, she'd be front and center for the marketing, wouldn't she?
Oh yeah,
then absolutely, she's a marketing dream, but that's not what in SLC. I'm going to say with SLC because I don't think that necessarily reflects what Sri Lanka wants. I don't think that's what SLC want. That's why I think though that we're a while away from that happening. But who knows, right? Absolutely. I didn't see this one before. Kavisha's proved that she's a great captain with last year's major club tournament, dragging her team to victory without Atapatu. I'm not, I sadly don't follow the major club tournament, but I'd love to know more about it and what she was doing. It's interesting. There's been a couple of questions come in about the head coach. As we said earlier on, we don't have any ideas. I mean, I've texted various people I know involved in this, and they have stayed silent about it. Who's their head coach? This is an interesting question. Some question. What should new coach do to prepare for the 2029 ODI World Cup and 2026 T20 World Cup? I kind of would argue. I think it's too late, and there isn't a big enough pool of players proven at this level for kind of to make wholesale changes to the T20s. I'm not going to say squad, but we'll say setup because there was quite a few changes in this team going to India, right? Yeah, I think at this point it's actually what can they do mentally to get them in the best place when they come to England and play in conditions that are slightly unfamiliar to them. What do you think, Estelle?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
What should the new coach do to prepare for the 2026 World Cup?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like it's too late to make massive changes, right, to the T20 squad or how they go about things. I think you have to kind of build on what's been done by Rumesh Ratnayaka and Athapattu, right? Give the players confidence. Try to see where they go. And the only thing I can think of is that you have to kind of work on the mental side of things because we've seen this team do really well in bilaterals and tri-series and then come to World Cups and look like a shadow of that team, right? And we did see that in the ODI World Cup as well. I mean, even that game that they won against Bangladesh, they had no business winning, right? It came on the back of I would say that Bangladesh lost it. Like Bangladesh panicked and lost the game. It was not anything to do with how Sri Lanka played, how well Sri Lanka played. So the mental side of things is something they really need to focus on, because that is what was good about that Asia Cup win. And I know we keep going back to that, but that's kind of the peak, right? That's where they hit, their top performance. And in that tournament, you could see they were really up for it mentally. They were up for it, and they were not out of the games that they played at any point, even when Atapattu was dismissed or didn't make runs. All of the other players were up for it, whereas they seem to go into a shell when it comes to World Cups. That side of things they will need to work on. The ODI World Cup, at the moment, I would say it's taking a back seat, right? They've got 4 years to prepare for it.
Yep.
You don't even know who the personnel are going to be by then. It could be a very, very different team to the one we saw at the World Cup this year. So I don't think they're thinking too much about that. But certainly for the T20s, I don't think there'll be much of a change in terms of the people.
Esther, I think you've got to go. Me and Dom are going to hang on because we need to talk about the other big change that's happened moments before World Cup starts, which is that Sri Lanka have changed their selectors. But I will let you go. Thank you for that, Estelle. I will press this button, which means we're now side by side. Dominic, we are weeks away from World Cup starting.
Yeah.
And this is
weeks
the
away
moment.
from another tour.
And weeks away from Pakistan turning up. Or days away from Pakistan turning up, really. Weeks away from England turning up. Then we've got a World Cup. Sri Lanka have got new selectors, and it's out with the old and in with the older. It looks like to me. I should also say, should caveat this with that the term for the previous selectors had ended, I think, at the end of this year, as in December, whatever.
2025.
So there needs to be new selectors in place. This isn't a kind of coup or at least it's not been painted out like that from what I can gather.
The thing is, to me, that just shows the short-sightedness, right? When you set out the terms of the selectors that there is a World Cup in February 2026. So it seems like a very easy thing to say, hey, we're going to temporarily extend the term so that we can do this. And we've gone back to Pramodia Wickramasinghe, who has been the chairman of selectors in the past. And it just shows kind of a lack of conviction in what they're doing. We've seen a lot of changes be made, first with the players, then with the assistant coaches, and then with the selectors. But there's one thing that has not changed: the man at the top. So for me, I wonder how much this change kind of is another attempt to stir up the pot, to change things, to hope to press the magic button and get fixes. And as we've lamented on the show many times, that simply doesn't work.
So I think that there'll be a change at the top by the end, or come the end of the World Cup, whatever that happens with Sri Lanka. If it be early on, or if it be, if we make it all the way and win. If we make it all the way and win, it's a great way for Sanath to leave, and he's would have yet again won another World Cup, with this time as a coach / manager. Right. If we fail miserably, then he's done his best for a couple of years. He's had a kind of good go at it. It hasn't quite worked out. We started this episode talking about Sri Lanka players in the IPL. There's 7 players going to the IPL. There's another 3 or 4 that could potentially end up playing in there, or kind of in the discussions around playing for top franchise teams in top franchise tournaments. This isn't, in terms of the context around kind of great Sri Lankan T20 teams, this isn't a great Sri Lankan T20 team, but there are some seriously talented players in there.
Yep.
Sri Lanka have always been great. When Sri Lanka are winning, I should say, when we had, Grand Sri Lanka, which in my mind goes from 1995 to 2015, we were greater than the sum of our parts, right? At this moment in time, we are almost totally reliant on winning games through individual performances. And actually, I think maybe changing selectors at this time, I don't think it's the worst thing, because I think previously when Promodio was, coming out of COVID, when he was in charge of selection, I think it was a total rebuild, a total new rebuild. They were having to bring players in. There's a lot of players he brought in then that were involved then who are now fully established internationals, going off again in the big bucks in the IPL. I don't think you necessarily need wholesale changes. I think you could probably stop any Sri Lankan cricket fan on the street and get him to write down even the top 20 T20 players, top 10 batters, top 10 bowlers, and I think it more or less be the same. I think it's more a tactical issue for me. It's like, how are we turning up to cricket games with the intention of winning them? That is where it's not quite working out for
100%. Exactly. I think you're right, Mark. Like, if you look at the quality in our side, we actually had a message. I think Nick was messaging. He says, for the talent that we have in the Sri Lanka side, we are like, it feels underwhelming. We're performing at a level like we did in 2016 or 2017 or 2018 when we didn't have players of this quality. We're quite literally, with the exception of Lasith Malinga, who was maybe not even playing in some of those squads, there was no one in the IPL. So what that seems to me is not thinking about how do we actually build a winning T20 side. And there's no commitment to that. And there's no idea that might take months, years, to develop a vision. And we've seen them pull the rug out several times. And I think that's not going to be how it's done. I think, especially given the resources we have, we could, if we use our resources right, this could be a golden era for Sri Lankan white ball cricket. But that's what we're looking for. Is we're looking for that high level, big picture thinking. It's almost as if, Mark, we talk about Mahela and Sanath and how they're different. You almost wish they had kind of switched the order, right? You had Sanath maybe the 2020 to 2023.
Oh, I don't think I agree with that. I don't know. I because I think the easy thing to do in sport, especially with a team like Sri Lanka and the pressures that are around big international professional sports teams, is to always stick with the old. And I think Mahela gave a chance to a lot of the new and the young. The new.
That's true. That is true.
And because I think so would have stuck with it. And the part of the problem Sri Lanka have had since 2015 was they didn't quite, I think they haven't quite got the timings right of when to let go of certain players, when to move away from things, right? And I think
to try things,
when to try things. I'm the most optimistic Sri Lanka fan in the world. I'm of the belief that there is 11 men and 11 women who could win World Cups and major tournaments.
I agree.
On this island, or if they're not on this island, they're playing cricket in other parts of the world, right? And I think that almost part of the problem is it's like almost overthought, and actually we need to work backwards. I will talk about road to World Cup. I made a bad. That's what I'm kind of trying to manifest. I mean, if you know my life, I've managed to not manifest anything. Whatever the opposite of manifesting is, that's what I've done. But I think when you're thinking about how to run sports teams, that's what you kind of got to be like, this is our goal, this is our goal, this is our goal. How do we get there? How do we get back to it? Well, I think the thinking is almost too, like, in some ways, almost too micro. So it's like, right, who can get us? So I always think about, last World Cup, and, this is no slight on him. I think he's an absolute legend. But how did we end up in a situation where Angelo Matthews was bowling the opening overs when we had so many other great bowling options around? And I think how has that happened? Yeah.
And it's almost as if the focus is on patching up holes rather than emphasizing your strengths, because I think there are two ways about it, right? You can either plug up all the holes or try to plug up all the holes, or think, well, what does this team actually do well? and how can we build a winning team around that?
Someone's asked me, do you read comments? I said yes. What I will add something to this is sadly we don't have time to read all the comments that get left under the shows. Sometimes there's like 40 comments post once they've gone out, but we do try and read them. He's asked Xhaka or Immobile, bro. For me, Xhaka, because Immobile never did it in the Premier League, so pointless. Dom, should we leave it there for today? Because
I think we should, because we're going to have the women's series coming up that will be back after every game, some combination of us. You may have to take off the 28th, I think, Mark.
I might have to take the day off, and the 31st as well. And there's one day, I think, when I'm in Sri Lanka when Pakistan are here playing. I'm going to try and get to it. I haven't told my wife yet. But if I magically end up in Dambula around that time of year, then don't be surprised. But that would be good. Yeah, we've got loads coming up on the Murali End. I've done a chat with a kind of rugby content creator who was down in Sri Lanka a few months ago from England. I have played a lot of rugby, and rugby is something I'm also passionate about, which I also know is a passion that a lot of people who watch this show share or listen to this show share as well. And he was down in Sri Lanka doing some stuff. I think we're going to put that show out in the next few days as well, so keep an eye out for that. We'll be back next soon, right, Dom? I can't remember when the first women's game is. Is it
the
like
21st,
4 days time?
I think. 21st, yeah.
4 days time. We'll be back on the 21st. Hit the subscribe, hit that like, leave your comments. Have a good Christmas if you don't hear from us before then. And a happy new year as well. See you all later. Bye.
It's the Murali End, you're the place to be. Analyze the players and the team. Keep a great company in the stream.
It's a Murali End. Welcome to the show. We're here when you're high. We're here when you're low. Some days you're happy, some days you wanna when happy it's we, when mad it's them. It's the same place, Murali End. Sri Lanka Cricket, we go represent. Go tell a friend.